friends. Welcome back to another very special episode of the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my friend and co-host, the demon who flies on the wings of a grasshopper,
Alex Dandino. Yep.
Yeah! That sounds more metal than the movie ever gets, but...
Yeah, wow.
All right, guys, you know the deal. 31 days, 31 pods. The horror mega marathon is upon us. And we're entering the dark realms of the Exorcist series today. But before that, a little bit of business, guys. Please go to patreon.com/Film Alchemist Podcast and join our community. It's the best way to support the show, and it's the best way to make the show exactly what you deserve. For as little as $1 a month, you can join our community, meet our awesome friends over there, get in with us, do some fun stuff. As you go up the Highlander tier ranking systems, you can actually select the movies that you want to hear us talk about in a patron-exclusive library. Awesome group over there. Thank you to those of you who already support the show. For those of you who are about to, thank you as well. We know every dollar is hard-earned. We try to work hard to earn those dollars as well. So thank you. From the bottom of our little black hearts. Make sure you go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel Film Alchemist to see video versions of most of our podcasts over there, as well as some other fun stuff. The email for the show is filmalchemistpod@gmail.com, and we're on all the socials you're on. So reach out, get a hold of us. We're easy to talk to. Or at least easy to reach, maybe not talk to. And we love hearing from you. All right. Enough of that nonsense. Let's get heretical. And Exorcist II The Heretic. I don't think it's unfair to say that this is the most maligned sequel in movie history. I think if you went through, and there are some that have worse ratings on this and that, right? I think if you went through every movie that was super beloved, right, and got a sequel that was hated, this is the biggest disjoiner, right? I think the only thing close would be Highlander and Highlander 2 The Quickening. Wildly unfair. Highlander 2 The Quickening, by the way, has a 0 on IMDb, and that's a fucking offense towards God. If there is a Pazuzu, he should burn those critics to the ground. That's neither here nor there. Someday I'll come and be the one who saves Highlander 2. But I don't think it's unfair to say this is the most despised sequel in movie history. Not like, because some people say like, well, what about, Halloween Part 15? That doesn't count. I'm talking about sequel, right? Number 2 in a series.
Right.
I think this is the most hated. Watching it today, I do think it's the worst sequel of all time. I don't know that it's completely as dog shit a movie as everyone makes out. I think when you say it's the worst sequel of all time, people assume it's just absolute trash across the board. I don't think that's true. But I think as far as the audience loved The Exorcist so much, it was such a cultural phenomenon film, I find it hard to imagine how many people read a script for this and are like, this is definitely feeding the pigs their slop. Alex, what did you make of Exorcist II The Heretic?
Well, in regards to your previous statement, I'm not sure anyone really read the script. They probably just saw, oh, Exorcist. I'm in. Why not?
I mean, this feels like something everyone in town would have wanted to be in on, right?
I mean, it's 4 years after the original Exorcist came out. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to be part of the most important horror franchise and possibly in history, then yeah, I'd say you'd probably want to be on it. I pretty much agree with every sentiment most of the reviewers. Most of the reviews I read, some of them are like, man, people were dicks in the 70s. Like, now reviews are very, very like, even if people don't like movies, like, well, there's this. I guess that's pretty cool. And then they write an entire review about it. In the 70s, like, the things I read today, just like reading reviews, were just like, piece of trash. Anyone involved with it should be possessed and then murdered themselves. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I've never seen the sequels to The Exorcist. I've only ever watched the original. That's a lie. I've watched Dominion and Exorcist.
I will tell you this: Exorcist 3 is a goddamn treat.
Right. well, and you said that before. I'm looking forward to it. This was, it's one of those things where I finished the movie. I'm like, I gotta say, I've never watched a movie invalidate the former so badly.
Completely.
Not just like based on quality, but just like all the things that make everything we talked about yesterday with The Exorcist is almost completely strip mined here. And they're like, yeah, but Pazuzu, you know? You're like,
Yeah.
Okay, that's literally the only thing left over. The rest of it's just like, I don't know, synchronizers and psychic brainwaves and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, what? You know what it is? It feels like an idea for a Cronenberg movie, and he's like, I'm not doing this. And then, like, handed it off. Like, that's what, like, when we start the movie off in that weird little, like, what I can only really, like, I wrote in my notes, I can only describe this movie as the lair of a bee-themed supervillain. Like, that honeycomb thing that all the kids lit.
It was like all the leftover flats from The Shining. It's like, we don't need that. And they're like, put some windows in it and have a guy pushing a big foam octagon in the background of every shot. Call it a day.
It was just like this really... So, like, when that whole thing starts, I'm just like, why is this happening? Because the movie begins in a place where you're like, all right, you know.
Well,
sort of similar.
Let's just take like a couple bullet points, because I would like to try. I don't know that this will be the world's longest show. I would like to try to talk about some of the ideas that might have been okay in here. Again, I'll say this: even Exorcist II The Heretic hasn't gotten that fake film Twitter shit where you'll see some asshole who's like, "Are we ready to, as a society, agree that The Heretic is a masterpiece?" I've never read that. That'll be the day when I'm like, we need to take film Twitter out back and old yeller it, is when someone says that.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's just like you start out, like you said, we're doing like satanic inception, right? And you're like, that's what really worked for me in the first one, right? Is the technology, the technology. And, well, actually before that even, right? You kind of know you're in trouble right off the bat. They start with a possession scene. And Richard Burton is sweating his way through this lodge, right? Just...
Oh, boy, is he.
Yeah, just fucking sweating his way through the scene, right? There's just people all over the place, right? Just blocking us from seeing the possessed girl. The possessed girl is seemingly not possessed. She just goes, hey...
I think she just has, like, yellow fever or something. Like, well, no, she's got some sort of...
Who knows?
Issue.
She's just literally like, hey, why me? In a normal voice. I heal people. Normal voice. Goes and lights herself on fire, and immediately we get our first, like, this is not going to be a mastercraft in technique, right? Like, there's some sloppy work being done in the candle burning. And you're like, all right, like, that's a good image. Like, they'll use that. And then once you get to the satanic inception where we're going back into Linda Blair's memories, but then she can tag out, leave Nurse Ratched in the memory, Richard Burton can do a sweaty tag in, right? And now they're in the memory without her attached.
Yeah.
This is the loosest piece of tech that's ever been in a movie, by the way, is the synchronizer. Oh, there is no rhyme, because at the end they're just synchronizing without someone to give them hypnosis commands. And it's just... But anyways, throw all that out, right? So the satanic inception aside, right?
At best, it's like a really advanced VHS player.
It's bad. It's so bad. But when they started overlaying what looked like pornography parodies of the bedroom scene that we didn't see between Marin and Regan in the first one, where like the demon's holding Regan's hand and they're fighting over the teats of Nurse Ratched, I was like, oh God, like, we're way off course. Like, this is not good.
Yeah. It just...
But to your point, though, what they took in the first one is they made these very relatable real-world horrors. And then what if you amp that up by seeing a loved one really assaulted?
Yeah. It's such a hard movie to talk about, and like I'm trying to find like the positive, like the affirmative for it is like that there were risks taken, and yeah, like there is this just like
that's good. You remember when you'd go to like when you were a kid and they had like science fiction and fantasy paperbacks, and you'd start reading them, and you're like, these are dense. Who are these written for? Like, who is this small niche of nerd that wants it to be so thick and dense? That's almost what they did here. They so overthought the room.
Yeah.
But see, that scene in general, though, right? Someone watched The Exorcist and said, you know what those people wanted when we watched part 1? We wanted to see her literally Darth Vader Marin's heart. And you're like, we didn't want that. A lot of what makes The Exorcist great is what we're not seeing.
Right.
When you just see that, she's a scarier character because an old man had a heart attack. Like, great.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the weird... to me, there's just this, like, healthy overdose of science fiction injected into this movie. That is actually exactly how I'd put it.
Yeah.
There's way too much science fiction in this horror movie. And there's not enough just, like, the horror that makes The Exorcist interesting is, like we talked about yesterday, the real world impact. Like, the realness of everything is what makes that movie so visceral, such an experience. What The Heretic does that would never have justified any, like, which would have made The Exorcist the worst movie ever made, is that it takes all these things that, like you were saying, we don't need to see, we don't need explained, and tries to explain them. Like, I don't...
Right. Well, the point of religion, right, is it's this series of idols and symbols that explain these big unknowables, right?
Right.
Imagine if the opening in Iraq of The Exorcist, everything, this is, Rocky Street, where we found Pazuzu from chapter 4 of the homework. And you're like, wait, what? Just show him being in a sun showdown with the snake dick guy. Got it. That's not okay. Bad things are going to happen. There's so much. Here's the thing, right? It's a movie called Exorcist II The Heretic that has, almost no possession, almost no exorcising. It has more fucking traveling than The Irishman. It really is one of those movies that I just kept pondering. What the fuck, right? I would have loved to have been in a room where they were going over these scripts, right? And just saying, who do you think this is servicing? And again, there are some ideas, right? The idea of Regan knowing that she's still possessed and trying to fight that fight on her own, right? Having a literal personal demon. The scene when she wakes up and Regan, and she almost walks off the ledge. I was like, that's great, because the next thing we see is her playing with her fucking Andy Warhol pigeon setup and pretending that nothing's wrong. So I was like, they're saying that she's just coped with this because the immense weight of the last time people tried to help her, they died. All right, that's an idea. That's a true blue sequel idea.
Sure, yeah.
Not
like the repression. Yeah. The repression of memories, like, that's what I thought we were at. Like, I really thought that's where we were going to go. Yeah. It was like, this is all about Reagan's repression of what happened, and like, I don't like some sort of what I thought was going to happen is Reagan's repression of what happened is what's keeping Pazuzu at bay, so to speak.
Yeah.
And like, we're about to get a whole new, like a full new, brand new possession. Like, he wasn't done. He was just lying in wait, that kind of thing. Not
Evil
really
never
what we
truly
got.
dies, right? Like, you're like, all right. And then I even like some of the crumbs, right? So Richard Burton becomes infatuated with this technology. With science, we can prove God. I was like, hell yeah, that's great, right? That's perfect. A great
Again, it's a perfect counterpoint. It's a perfect counterpoint to Karras. Like, Karras is out. Karras is done. He doesn't want to deal. Like, his faith is lost. The counterpoint is a guy who wants to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. His faith is so strong, he must prove it.
Unlike Karras, he doesn't want to believe it for 1 second by himself. He wants the world to know that he hasn't wasted his life, that his friend didn't waste his life. I love that beat. The idea of these old priests searching for the devils that never manifested and it haunting them is lovely for storytelling, right? all that starts to get mucked up and washed aside. And you just instantly know, right? In the first one, name yourself. I'm the devil. All right, that's metal. That's hardcore. We immediately get it. In this one, name yourself. Pazuzu. It's like, that's just not as cool.
Right.
That's just not. And then also, like, so what? The idea of just adding justified. Like the enormous amount of story in Africa to seemingly have it not matter at all, except for the loosest metaphor that humans are like locusts because we grate on each other's nerves. We are voracious, carnivorous swarm.
Good Lord, was that the metaphor I was supposed to pull from that?
Yeah.
I literally was like, I was just like...
Imagine how they did like an hour of that in Africa to get to that one metaphor, and the Matrix did the humans are a virus in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
This is another thing. The Exorcist II The Heretic's a movie that I kept pausing and being like, is this 5 hours long? Oh, God. I still have, 28 minutes left. It felt so fun. Again, I think it's because, like The Irishman, they can't just say, hey, let's go to the house where the first one happened. They're literally stuck in traffic jam.
I was at the hour mark. I was at the hour mark, and I was like, oh, my God. Holy shit, there's more of this. Like... And not to say that it's just like, oh, it goes on for days, because it feels like that because, again, like, you're just watching this movie invalidate its premise almost simultaneously as it, like, again, the use of science, like Richard Burton, like, that the beat starts so well.
You have a couple of those first act cornerstones where you're like, I could see the movie this could become.
Totally. Never manifests.
Yeah, and then they're like, or would you like to take the amazing thrill ride, nature's roller coaster, the Locust? And you're like, wait, so the scary demon from part 1 that's fucking neck snapping and, chucking people out windows is a fucking grasshopper?
Just a grasshopper.
Lame. Not even like a swarm, like one grasshopper.
No, like one. Single grasshopper.
It's like flying into like the old bedroom and just like floating around like a little like douche.
Well, it's just like you think about like how metal, like, oh yeah, like from the first movie, how metal, like when Reagan describes Captain Howdy, you're like, well, that's fucked up. And then this one, it's like, oh cool, Jim.
Yeah, she does like that, Bruce Springsteen pose in front of the statue, and you're like, yeah. Yeah. And then this one, it's like...
And then it's like, oh, cool, Jiminy Cricket's in this one.
Dude,
great.
He literally tells the pilot, he's like, I flew this route on the wings of a demon. And it's like, you are overselling. And I know you're a Catholic, so that's your racket. But good Lord, you are overselling what we just watched with our own eyes. I mean, and that's another one. Not only do we travel by traffic jam, train, plane, we travel across all of Africa by Locust. There's so much traveling and walking in this movie.
It's just so... Again, like, half the movie is exposition to get us to this, like, next scene that means less than the previous scene did. Like, honestly, like, every single time we're doing something, I'm like, not only is it, like, distractingly bad, they're great. Like, Louise Fletcher's in this movie, Nurse Ratched, Richard Burton...
Yes, great cast. Honest
Linda
to God,
Blair.
I'll tell you what I thought was happening, right? Because the moment they started fucking with the synchronizer, I'm like, this is a rapist invention. Like, rapists will use this against the human race. I was like, this isn't okay, right? Because they'll like, it's like that Black Mirror, like, oh, if I rape you in your dreams, it's not rape. You're like, yeah, this is not good.
Right.
We need to smash this machine now before this gets out of control. And I kept thinking, because they cast Nurse Ratched as the anti-Ratchet, where she's the nicest nurse ever. And every time she kept playing with kids, in that scene when she was giving those two kids the bath, I'm like, for sure she's going to not answer the phone because she's going to drown those two kids. And we're going to find out that this is some kind of elaborate fucking plot. Because by the end, when they start doing the synchronizer without it, right? There's one scene when he's in Africa, right? And Linda Blair is seemingly using it while it's not around, right? And at the end, they had the light flashing on Nurse Ratched in her last scene in the movie without the synchronize.
Right.
I thought they were going to set it up that this is all some kind of weird therapy unreality, which, again, equally uninteresting and does nothing to help the movie at all.
Yeah,
I feel bad. Let's
honestly,
talk about something good. I feel bad. We're kind of shitting on a lot.
I will, like, this is the thing, is I talked about, like, it's not shitting on a movie that, one, all of us think is, like, if there's someone out there who thinks The Heretic is great, I invite you, one, to explain to us why we're wrong. But more to the point, like...
And we won't even fight you. I just want to hear you wax
I won't.
about
I just
it.
want to know what the opinion is, because quite frankly, like what makes The Exorcist interesting is the fear of the unknown.
Yes.
Like, the fear of... And it's weird for a movie that is the sequel to a movie about the fear of not just the unknown, but the unknowable. Like, it is beyond space and time to know these things, to know the world of a demon, the world of God itself.
Very few of us know the truth.
To bring it back and be like, well, you know, repressed memories in this weird rape engine will, like, just drag it right out of you. It's
what if that was the sequel to, like, Thomas the Train? The little raper that could. He just keeps chugging along with this synchronizer. It's literally a Men in Black thing, but, like, more rapey.
It is this really weird... But I think that's the thing, and that's the thing that I'm trying to gather. And, like, if anybody does like this movie, I'm assuming the reason they like it is because there is because this movie does a lot of science fiction work, like a lot of science fiction stuff.
Well,
like,
yes,
I think what you said earlier about, like, because I remember, like, those. I mean, when I was in elementary school, the book fair things that they would do, like, in the, like, when you had library day, you'd go to the library and they'd have books that you could just take. Like, they'd give you books. It wasn't even like a rental thing. It would just be like, oh, hey, here's free books. And, like, I always took the weirdest one I could find. Normally it was just like a weird fantasy novel I was never going to read. But, like
the one I just bought you for your birthday.
First off,
the dinosaur and the virgin with the tagline.
First off, the virgin and the dinosaur will be what will be.
And
read.
the tagline is "Time is on nobody's side."
Time is on nobody's
that
side.
better be on the fucking book club on the Discord, because
this is on the book club for sure.
Right, but so that book, right? It's dense, and you're like, who cared about virgins and dinosaurs? So that's kind of... Here's the thing, though, right? If I gave this movie credit, it's that there is sometimes a problem with sequels where they just remake a shittier version of the first movie.
Right.
This movie absolutely, it's coming up to the plate and taking the biggest daddy hacks it can. Granted, it's essentially strikeouts with maybe like a long foul ball in there. But it's, right. I mean, it's taken some cut. It's refusing to just remake The Exorcist.
Well, what's interesting, too, is, like, this started out as they wanted just a beat-for-beat rehash of The Exorcist, which is weird because, like, there's just, like, little husks. Like, Lamont's investigation is very similar to Karras trying to figure things out, or even Chris McNeil. But, like, what it really ends up being is this investigation, I guess, into, you know what? This is the good thing. What it tries to do is do an investigation not of the spiritual, but of the metaphysical. That really is what the movie ends up doing.
Yeah.
That it tries to do.
Well, they talk about this, that she could be a healer, right? She cures this girl with autism and lets her speak because she had a brush with I like the idea that the Locust swarm came to the African village because that boy was so good, right? He had some kind of divine gift. Right. And that Pazuzu is, Pabozo is flying around trying to just, like, even this field. I'm like, great, that makes sense. Someday, and I like the idea that there will be this locust mind, right? This hive mind of the world. That, because there is this fun clash of religious iconography, right? In some of the African scenes. Like, I thought Marin being in the village and trying to protect the boy from the locust, right? And watching spin the whip like that's going to stop the whole horde. And then seeing him possess, I was like, oh, good, we are going to get a possession. This is great. And then they cut to that fucking, the one place where they just refuse to build ladders. Again, we have to travel by foot up the side of a mountain. But they do a cliffhanger exorcism. But it lasts like a minute and a half. I'm like, this is by far the coolest shit in the movie. That should have been like a 10-minute set piece.
Yeah.
But
it's an interesting... There's another thing about the title of this...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. The title of this movie being The Heretic is so weird. Because, like, in the beginning of the movie, they explain, like, Lamont... Basically, the Catholic Church is trying to be like, listen, we're very cool now. We do, like, youth groups, so we don't want anyone to think we still believe in Satan.
We all know how the Catholic Church's youth groups went.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, literally, like... The exposition for the beginning of the movie for Lamont's journey is, hey, they're going to try to pin all this heresy on Marin because he's super, like, I don't know, super priest. It's hard to tell. But
because
basically
he actually believes in Christianity.
Because he actually believes in the things you're supposed to believe when you're a man of the cloth. So they're like, yeah, we're going to pin all this heresy on him. You're going to have to investigate this Reagan McNeil exorcism. They're like, oh, okay. So that, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So maybe the movie, like, the title is cluing... The title's cluing me into, like, okay, Marin's just, like, on the face a heretic, but, like, what we're going to find out is maybe Reagan is also, like, this savant, like, something, like, literally anything. And, again, I was just, like, stumped that the movie was called The Heretic.
Yeah.
Exorcist II. I'm like, who else is a heretic in this movie?
Yeah, you're like, I guess the pixie haircutted nanny who just turns real quick, and we have no idea why. And at the end,
it's either that.
They crash the car, right?
Right.
And you can tell it's going to be her. She's being a real sack of shit, right?
Yeah.
They crash the car, and she gets out, and she's like, you're like, okay, we're doing the Omen. When she lights the fire, she just stand there and burns in slow motion for what felt like 38 minutes of my life. And at the end, they have her wrapped up like she's Lord Voldemort. And, the priest walks over. He's like, it wasn't you being a bad person. It was your thirst for answers. I'm like, no, she was just bad. And then my favorite part, though, is when they just stand up. And they're like, just leave Crispy on the neighbor's doorstep.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll just... I actually... Okay, so once Lamont gets to the hive mind place and sees the...
Yes.
I'm sorry. It's the weirdest set for a movie like this. But, like, once they get to the hive mind place...
At least it looks cool. At least there's something. This part where we do the ritual in the temple, and then the whole thing with James Earl Jones, I actually thought that, and that is what becomes Prequel and Dominion, essentially, is that kind of African exorcism. Right. But that part of him spitting a Jaguar, and they do those awesome Evil Dead, like, aerial shots through the minis. I was like, okay, now we're clash of, right? Like, two holy men have to come together and worship a higher god to take on Pabozo. I thought that was... Like, I liked the part with James Earl Jones. I thought that was the shit.
I honestly thought the movie was going to... I really, especially the beginning, thought the movie was going to be all about science versus nature.
Yes.
And about this, like, what do you bow to? What do you respect? So on and so forth. And, like, by the end, anyone who had any question that science could conquer nature would be told otherwise. I was under the assumption that Father Lamont was the heretic of the title because I was like, oh, he's going to be like,
me too.
Science proves all this. God means, like, God's nothing.
Well, they talk about how he's become obsessed with and even infatuated with the demon and the technology. And I was like, yes, fuck yes, give me that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
when he can't find Kumonko, whatever the fuck the name is.
I think it's Kokumo. I don't know.
Yeah, so as he's looking for him, and the guy's like, oh, Kukumu? And they just pull out some girl to show her tits, and he's like, you got me. And he's a little fed up. He actually calls, and somehow this is when the synchronizer light hits Reagan, so you're like, all right, is this real or unreal? Again, just another, like, it has no artistic value. It's just adding another layer of fuckery for us to mess with. Thank God, because we got to get this episode out. We got to have something to talk about. But he says, she goes, say my name, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, Pabozo. And all of a sudden, he's at the Locust temple, right? And James Earl Jones has this awesome, like, Locust headgear. And he's doing, like, hey, if you believe in your faith, step on these spikes and walk over here. he steps, and then he falls and wakes up in the grasshopper laboratory. What did you make of all that, Jazz?
It's very confusing. I mean, to me...
That's very politique.
Again, it's one of those things, like, it's this, like, at the plate, huge fucking cut towards this, like, metaphysical journey we're supposed to be on. And, like, that to me is what it's supposed to be, is this, like, metaphysical exploration of self, of otherness, of all kinds of shit. Like, but that's the problem, is, like, there's no concrete way to explain the metaphysics, or explain that, not even explain the metaphysics, but explain the metaphysical notion that they're trying to go for. So instead, it's just this, like, hodgepodge of shit, and the synchronizer and all this other stuff ends up being this sort of, like, it's this catch-all, essentially.
You're like, I wish the screenwriter would have synchronized any of this.
Yeah, like, it's basically like, I don't want to explain any of this, so just point at that little weird thing.
Well, it has, like, an Avatar The Last Airbender, right? What do, like, the hippies in that weird Shining set, Ballet Regan, the Air Temple, and the Locust tribe all have to do with each other than they're human, and somehow are connected to Papozo. That we have no idea why. So this demon attacked this boy in an African tribe. Years later, Father Marin finds the tiny head, which leads to the giant dick snake statue.
Right.
Which then leads us to Georgetown, which then leads us to Inception in San Francisco. Like, you know what I mean? It's just
San Francisco and then back to DC.
And this isn't all the way an Exorcist 2 problem. That's kind of, again, what I said, like, my one gripe with Exorcist 1. I don't know why you compound it in this film.
I think that's the thing that makes... That's really the thing that I think I was most shocked by, like, about this movie in general, is that other than Iraq, The Exorcist is centrally located. Like, they're around Georgetown, but it's certainly not a thing where they're like, oh, we're going to go here and there. And then, like, it's very centrally located. And that, I think, adds to the claustrophobia of the story that's being told. Because the movie, like...
Also Exorcist the relatability.
Right. The Exorcist is 2 hours long, but it doesn't go all over the place. I think in trying to expand the world of The Exorcist itself, the problem is the story. The thing that makes it so unique and the thing that makes it actually scary takes such an enormous hit that it's kind of unrecoverable. Like, I don't care about the Locust thing. I think that's a big problem. Like, it's supposed to be this huge visual metaphor, and I didn't give a shit. Like, I honestly was just
it doesn't happen until like an hour and a half into the movie.
Yeah, you're almost done with the fucking movie when it comes up, and you're like, got it. This was actually really important, and you should have put this in. I don't know.
Well, by then you're
first
like
30.
They don't have a horror movie moment essentially in that movie until
what, 30 minutes in?
Like
longer.
20 minutes left. Because that's what I mean. Is Regan almost falling off a cliff? I mean, because to me, when they re-show the pornography recast of whatever that fucking makeup was on her, when
that's not her.
But that's what I mean. Like, whatever that fucking makeup was that doesn't look right, it's so bad. It looks like a porn recast of The Exorcist. You're like, that's not scary. That's just fucking silly and funny. So I would say there's not a real kind of horror movie moment. And that's what, you know what really sucks too? Is when they got to the house at the end, when he opens the door and the locusts come out, you're like, all right, that's a fucking really cool scene. It lasts very short. Yeah, I guess all of it kind of sucks. I'm trying to think of anything. When they go into the bedroom, right, there is that cool beat where he's now confronted with bedroom eyes Regan.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like...
Good shot.
Yeah.
Great shot.
Like, let's hump it out. They had already made the crack about doesn't he need a woman. All right. This is cool. You're looking at this. And then they start playing with the, does he have a infatuation with Regan? Maybe.
Right.
Does he love her as a woman or his vessel to this demonic proof? So, okay, like, there's some imagery we can work with here, and him battling between the Regans and him becoming the murderous sentinel. Like, all right. Like, now we're doing something. We keep having to cut to a cab for no reason.
Yeah. Like, I think that's the problem, too. Is, like, we keep being on board with, like, one thing, and then... Sorry, we have a very big story. It's exactly what we talk about with like you Inception said, is the same thing.
The Exorcist 1 is a really small scale story, right? What if we are worthless and alone, juxtaposed with what if we're not, and isn't that scarier? And the stakes are the life of one small girl in a room, right? One man's soul, right? They're very relatable, small. The room is very drab and empty almost. The weird thing is, I want to know if the fish survived the exorcism in part 1. That's something I didn't think about. Neither here nor there. As a fish tank owner, I'm always concerned. What are your algae levels? Never mind. But there was something really powerful in that simplicity, right?
Yeah.
This movie says, what if at the end of The Exorcist, we turned the stuff that you thought you liked into a universal ride?
Right. Well,
and it blows. Like when the house starts coming apart and she has a swarm, like Pabozo has a swarm of locusts to do nothing.
Yeah.
Like, why are they there? And then why do we keep cutting away to the woman slowly burning? Was she a cultist? Did she somehow get this job to help further the agenda of
Right, was she like a Mrs. Baylock in The Omen? Like, is that like part of her deal?
And so they just keep jumping around, and it's almost as if by the end the movie is just highlighting. Like, there's a scene when the priest almost brings down a plane with a lightning bolt, it looks like. And you're like, cool, skip that. Hey, let's catch a cab. And you're like, what the fuck? The cabbie looks at him like, oh no, that street? And they're like, yeah, just go. Like, all right. Oh, wait, no. And it's just, it almost becomes this highlight reel of failure.
Well, to me, I think this is really kind of like the crux of my argument always, forever will be with Heretic, is the point of The Exorcist is it could be anybody. Yeah. Anyone could be possessed. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. To make Reagan unique is to dismantle everything that's interesting about the exorcism itself.
Yeah, you know what?
Reagan being special.
It's actually like this movie does what the people thought Matrix Reloaded did.
Yeah,
a lot of people didn't like that Neo wasn't the one, right? And there was something about we all want to wake up from the Matrix and have control, but Neo is the one. Okay, Christ metaphor. This one is. It could be inside of all of us, right? There, I think even in the Exorcist 1, when they do that possession, we see the white face on her and Karis both, right? So it's in Holy Man and Victim at the same time.
Yeah.
This one's like, nope, she's a healer. And it's like, when did that fucking start, right? Why couldn't she heal her ass out?
Not only is she a healer, she has this... Like,
she does have no scars left. Maybe that's...
Not only is she a healer, she's like one of the first of this new type of people who like all have these
the
psychic
fucking
powers.
White Locust, yeah.
And yeah, it's just like... It's one of those things where like by making Reagan exceptional or special along with a host of other people, you take away what makes that first movie so interesting and so compelling is it could be any of us.
I mean, it's everywhere. It's the set pieces got bigger, but they achieved nothing, right? You get this score by who did the score? Ennio Morricone. Yeah, like one of the most legendary film composers, and it just does nothing but remind us that it's almost this telenovela, terrible story. You get sweaty ass Richard Burton off the couch to just remind us how he's performing a lot, and and he's a great actor. He's a great actor,
Liz Taylor,
but you're just watching him not achieve a human moment in the whole film.
Everybody is phoning it in. Like, I think that's the thing that bothers me the most is like you feel like Linda Blair, who is amazing in the first movie.
Holy shit, was she great? Yeah,
she feels so like there's that first scene she has with Louise Fletcher. The first scene she's in, she keeps the way keeps saying dialogue, I'm like,
she almost has a southern drawl in a couple moments.
yeah, I'm like, is she reading cue cards? What's going on? Like, it's a very weird, like, I don't know.
I mean,
it just
also,
feels like,
I don't blame them because, again, this script is big on ideas and
short on ideas.
Just a locust-ridden field every other department. So, do I blame the actors? I mean, this just feels like one of those movies that across the board, and it's not even that it doesn't look okay and that they couldn't have had like the talent to make a better film. I always come back to this, right? You're making another sequel because you know that I want to see this again and give you my money, right? I want to recapture the magic of that first experience. So I want to go to the theater and feel something akin to what I felt watching The Exorcist, and I'll give you money for that. And I've never heard anyone ever be able to tell me what tickle is this scratching for an Exorcist fan, right?
Agreed.
All it does is it kneecaps other scenes in The Exorcist I like and makes me want to jump out of a second floor window to my death. That's essential. I mean, I guess that's what it's driving me to have.
It's driving all of us to Karras ourselves.
I can have a virtual reality experience that Father Karras did on my way out. I feel bad. This is probably the most we've disliked a movie we've ever
I was just thinking that. This is easily the most negative we've ever been. But honestly, like, this movie, we had such a great talk yesterday about The Exorcist. Like, I fucking love that movie. And I think that's what's hard about this kind of thing. Yeah. Like, for it is rightfully one of the worst sequels ever made.
Yeah,
and, like,
it was going to be a tightrope to ever make a fully satisfying sequel to that movie anyways.
So for it to be a thing where we're trying to find good things, but honestly, it's just a movie that, has just these very large ideas that could have worked had the time been spent to actually work on them. But really, they end up just being ideas that are on screen, but not in screen.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. There's 3 or 4 starts to entire movies that could have worked, right?
Yes.
Regan carrying a personal demon trying to live a normal life. That is a movie I would have watched. This whole Father Lamaze, what's his name? Father Lamont. Yeah, Father sweaty, leathery guy trying to fucking use science to prove that God and demons exist at the expense of this girl. Very interesting, right? Everything in Africa was very interesting to me, right? I would have liked to have followed Kukomo and watch him, like, how does he spit the Jaguar, right? He says, I'll spit a Jaguar, and he spits not a Jaguar in the... Give me more of that shit, right? I like that imagery. It's fun. Watching that and Christianity collide, that's fine. Yeah, if you want to make the fucking cultist movie with Nurse Ratched and worst nanny ever, let's do that fucking movie. I'd watch... Yeah, so people find out about this weird case, and they form a cult around Regan. That makes perfect fucking sense. So there are at least 4 segments of movies that make sense, right? And the cultist could be the cult of the Locust, whatever, right? You can tie all this together. They have 4 separate ideas that you could make an entire hour-and-a-half movie in the Exorcist universe that should have been interesting based on the fallout of the first movie we saw. This movie kind of sprinkles ideas and then just makes us commute for an hour and 20 minutes. And it's hard to watch, man. I try really hard on this show to find any excuse to say that something's well done and I like it. This is, if I'm being honest, short of Phantom Menace, this is probably the biggest failure in movie history to me.
Yeah.
It does.
I'd agree with that.
It comes so, I mean, it pales so much in comparison to the first one. And not only that, it doesn't even try to service the fans, right? Whereas Phantom Menace, no movie ever had more budget, more love, more expectation. They could have had anything, right? There were no obstacles in making Phantom Menace, which turns out was the Phantom Menace was George Lucas's free reign. And they just made the biggest dog shit movie that also invalidates a lot of the stuff we like.
True.
But at least Phantom Menace is still like a watchable, complete story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just think it's hard. And that's the thing. it's never easy to follow up a movie that just hits like a fucking atom bomb.
It's a tall order, and it's a weird thing to ask 4 years after. Like, and again, we're talking about this movie almost 50 years after the original came out, and it still has this unflinching legacy. So to ask 4 years after a movie literally changed the way we watch movies, to do it again, it was never going to be a task that was serviceable.
And that's the thing, right? The way Jaws scared an entire species, us, about the water, The Exorcist put demons in our homes again, right? And it was scary.
Yeah.
The thing is, when you see Exorcist 3, which we'll talk about tomorrow, Exorcist 3 takes a lot of shit, and it did for years, right? It was always like, oh, that movie fucking sucks, blah, blah, blah. It's actually really good. And I think because Exorcist 2 was so horrendously bad and such a slap in the face to fans of The Exorcist, The Exorcist 3 got a lot of that, like, spillover bullshit. And I think if Exorcist 3 had come out instead of The Heretic, people would have really liked that sequel, right? Been like, yeah, it sucks compared to The Exorcist, but compared to your average horror movie, this is really fucking good.
Right.
And, you know, however it goes, right? The Heretic's something we have, and I do applaud them for big ideas. Again, they had 4 ideas for complete scripts, and they went the scrapbook method. And hey, man, that was their choice. I don't know, dude. I'm trying.
To be done.
I'm fucking trying.
That's it.
That's it. Put this fucker down. I like Nurse Ratched. I'm going to drown this one in the bathtub and move on with my day because I'm fucking stoked to talk about Exorcist.
I'm excited
3.
to see Exorcist. I'm excited to talk about Exorcist 3.
Exorcist 3
That's gonna be awesome.
Is a movie that is one of those ones where people on Film Twitter are like, guys, this is really good, and they're right. If you're the guy who's going to do the film The Heretic on Twitter thing, God bless you, lad. God bless you. That's it, guys, for Exorcist 2 The Heretic.
Tell us why this movie's great if you are that guy.
Hey, we'll do it as a Patreon exclusive. I will get on a Zoom with you, and we can talk for an entire day. If you come legit. I will give you all my time to make this happen. All right, guys.
Don't just quote Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, don't come in with that weak shit. Really think it out. All right, that's it. Tomorrow, The Exorcist 3. Guys, 31 days, 31 pods. Thank you. We know it's a lot. Thank you for your support. Keep sharing, retweeting, all the stuff. Tell your friends to come join the fun, man. It's spooky season. We all want to watch the movies. Let's watch them together. As always, thank you. Patreon.com/FilmAlchemistPod. The best way to help this show. Also, the way to make sure we talk about the specific movies you want. Film Alchemist on YouTube. The email, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Find us on the socials. That's it. I gotta take a shower. Whew.